The restaurant was alive with quiet energy, the kind that only comes from a place where people come not just to eat but to feel something special. Soft golden lights hung above each table, casting a warm glow on white tablecloths and polished glasses. The aroma of rich sauces and fresh bread floated in the air. In one corner, an old piano sat, a bit worn but full of character, almost like it had stories to tell if anyone would listen. She moved through the tables with careful steps, balancing plates and glasses with skill born from years of practice. Her uniform was neat, but there was nothing extraordinary about her appearance. To most people, she was just another waitress, one who smiled politely and remembered orders. But there was something in the way she carried herself, a quiet confidence. That went unnoticed by many, except perhaps those who looked closely. The millionaire walked in just as the dinner crowd was settling in. He was tall, sharply dressed, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that borders on arrogance. He was used to attention, used to being in charge, and he expected everything around him to match his sense of control. He didn't look around much. His eyes scanned the room with a careful precision, like a man inspecting a scene for details that might disturb him. The waitress noticed him immediately, but she kept her focus on her tables, moving efficiently, her mind in the rhythm of her work. He chose a table near the middle, giving him a full view of the restaurant. He didn't know it yet, but his plans for a quiet evening were about to change. Ordered quickly, barely looking at the menu, expecting the best without needing to ask questions. The staff moved to fulfill his requests, whispering to each other about the high-profile guest. He was a man who rarely made mistakes in his life. He certainly didn't expect to be surprised tonight, as she brought a tray of wine to a nearby table. The waitress's eyes momentarily drifted toward the piano. It was an old instrument, a little chipped on the edges, but it had a soul. She had spent countless hours as a child sitting there, letting her fingers glide over the keys, losing herself in the melodies she could create. Life had changed, responsibilities had piled up, and she had traded her music lessons for work shifts, but the piano still called to her. It waited silently in the corner, like an old friend who never judged. The evening moved on. Conversations hummed quietly, silverware clinked against plates, and the sound of laughter occasionally rippled through the room. She served dishes, refilled glasses, and smiled at each guest, keeping her movements precise but light. Then came a moment when the restaurant grew a little quieter. One of the younger staff members bumped into a chair, and a small clatter broke the background noise. The piano seemed to respond to the change, almost as if it were waiting for her. She paused for a moment, her hands brushing against the edge of the piano keys. No one noticed, except the few diners nearby, who were focused on their own conversations. She sat down carefully, letting her fingers hover above the keys. Note was soft, almost hesitant, like testing the waters, then another and another, until the notes began to form a melody. It was simple at first, a gentle tune that matched the warmth of the room, but it carried a depth that drew in anyone who happened to hear it. The millionaire looked up from his glass, surprised by the sudden music. He frowned slightly, not because it was unpleasant, but because it was unexpected. He didn't come for a performance. He came to dine quietly, to enjoy his evening without interruptions. Yet the sound caught his attention in a way he didn't anticipate. He watched, curious despite himself, as the waitress continued to play. Her eyes were closed, her focus absolute, and the music seemed to flow through her as if it had been waiting inside her for years. The few diners who noticed her playing stopped mid-conversation, drawn to the melody. It was as if the music created a bubble around her, a space separate from the ordinary world of the restaurant. She didn't play for applause or recognition. She played because the piano needed her, because she needed it. The notes carried emotions that words could not capture, feelings that had been bottled up inside her for too long. The millionaire's frown softened into curiosity. He leaned slightly forward, listening more intently. There was skill in her hands, yes, but also something more, a story told through sound. He could feel the passion in each note, the subtle shifts in rhythm and tone that spoke of experience and heartache and quiet determination. It was unlike anything he had expected from someone who, on the surface, seemed ordinary. For the waitress, the music was freeing. She had long ago accepted that her dreams of performing publicly were out of reach, that life required practicality over passion. But here, in this familiar corner of the restaurant, she found herself lost in the moment, letting the piano carry her away. The world narrowed to the keys beneath her fingers, and the melody rising from them, filling the space with something alive. The crowd around the piano began to grow. Diners shifted in their seats, turning toward her quietly, their curiosity piqued. Staff paused in the hallways, noticing the unusual silence that came with people stopping to listen. It was not loud or intrusive. It was gentle and captivating. People felt the music in their chest, a sensation that went beyond sound. It was rare, and it caught everyone off guard. Even the millionaire, who rarely admitted surprise, felt a flicker of something unexpected. He had underestimated the evening. He had underestimated her. Waitress, he thought, simple and quiet, going about her work without ambition. Yet here she was, commanding attention without saying a word, her music speaking louder than any introduction could. His mind raced with questions. How could someone with such talent remain unnoticed in the world? How many stories like hers existed, hidden in plain sight? She played on, oblivious to the millionaire's thoughts, to the gathering crowd, to the whispers of admiration. The piano carried her memories, her joys, and her struggles. Each note was deliberate yet fluid, telling a story that touched everyone who listened. For her, it was not about impressing anyone. It was about reconnecting with a part of herself that had been dormant for too long. Time seemed to slow. Plates were left unfinished. Conversations paused, and eyes were fixed on her hands, moving over the keys. The millionaire felt a strange pull, a sense of recognition that went beyond talent. There was authenticity in her music, something rare and real. It reminded him that not all wealth or influence could create such a moment, that some experiences came from pure, unrefined passion. As the final notes of her first piece faded into the air, there was a brief moment of silence. Then, softly at first, the restaurant erupted in applause. Some diners clapped quietly, while others smiled in awe, whispering to each other about the unexpected gift they had just witnessed. The waitress opened her eyes, her face flushed with a mix of surprise and humility. She hadn't expected anyone to notice so much, yet the warmth of the response wrapped around her like a gentle embrace. The millionaire remained seated, his expression thoughtful. He had come expecting an ordinary evening, and instead, he had encountered something extraordinary. He realized that his assumptions about people and talent could be completely wrong. The waitress had transformed the ordinary restaurant into a place of wonder, even if only for a brief moment. He had seen a glimpse of something powerful and unforgettable, and he knew, even then, his life had just intersected with someone remarkable. She returned to her work, serving the remaining tables with a renewed sense of purpose. But in the back of her mind, the music lingered, as if it had opened a door to possibilities she had long forgotten. The millionaire watched her carefully, no longer seeing just a waitress, but someone with a hidden depth and talent that demanded attention. He knew that tonight would stay with him for a long time. A reminder that extraordinary things often come from the most unexpected places. After her first unexpected performance, the restaurant seemed to breathe differently. The atmosphere had shifted from ordinary elegance to something charged with quiet anticipation. Diners exchanged glances, wondering if they had just witnessed a brief miracle. Some returned to their meals, but more kept their eyes on the piano, hoping to hear more. The waitress returned to her duties, carrying plates and glasses with her usual precision, yet there was a noticeable lightness in her step. Something had awakened inside her, a sense of joy that went beyond the simple act of serving food. She moved around the tables, offering polite smiles, but her mind lingered on the piano in the corner. Every so often, she stole a glance at it, almost as if the instrument itself was calling her back. The millionaire sat quietly observing her. He had initially been skeptical, expecting only the usual polite background music from the restaurant's occasional performers, if any. But now, he could not ignore the skill and emotion she had shown. He watched as she interacted with other guests, noting how her eyes sparkled when someone complimented the meal, yet how her mind seemed elsewhere, subtly drawn to something deeper. A lull appeared between dinner courses. The restaurant had settled into a calm rhythm. The soft hum of conversation created a gentle backdrop. The waitress, now carrying a tray of desserts, felt the pull of the piano stronger than before. It was as if the melody she had played earlier had left a lingering presence, waiting for her to continue. She gently set down the desserts at the table, excusing herself with a quiet smile, and walked over to the piano again. She hesitated for a brief moment before her fingers touched the keys. This time, she did not start with a simple tune. She let her hands move freely, improvising, exploring the range of emotions stored in her memory. The music began softly, almost like a whisper, but it soon gained momentum. Notes cascaded like water, delicate yet strong. Carrying a depth that was impossible to ignore, the diners immediately noticed. Conversations paused entirely. A couple dining nearby leaned closer, eyes wide, captivated by the beauty of the performance. Even the staff, usually preoccupied with clearing tables and refilling glasses, stopped for a moment to listen. The music drew everyone in, uniting them in an unspoken appreciation for something pure and extraordinary. The millionaire felt a jolt of recognition. He had seen talented people before, but rarely someone who could make music seem alive in a room. The way she played was not mechanical. It was storytelling. Each note had intention, each pause had meaning. He realized that he had been judging her by appearances, completely unaware of the hidden world inside her. His skepticism faded, placed by an intense curiosity about her background and her story. As the melody continued, he noticed her expressions. Her eyes were closed, yet there was a calm intensity on her face. Her body moved with the rhythm, leaning slightly forward, then relaxing back. It was as if she had entered a space where only she and the piano existed, a world separate from the restaurant and its daily concerns. The emotion in her playing was palpable, a mixture of longing, hope, and joy that resonated with everyone listening. The other diners were equally affected. A woman near the window held her hand to her chest, moved by the music in a way she could not explain. A young man whispered to his partner, "It's incredible. I've never heard anything like this." Even those who had initially been distracted by phones or side conversations were now focused entirely on the piano. The room, though large and filled with people, seemed smaller, more intimate. Connected by the music, the waitress continued, unaware of the crowd growing. She did not perform for recognition. She performed because it was a part of her. It was as natural as breathing, a release of all the years she had spent keeping her passion tucked away. The music became bolder, more expressive, filling every corner of the restaurant with a life that seemed to transcend the ordinary world. Each note was deliberate, yet spontaneous, a reflection of her experiences, both the joys and the struggles. The millionaire leaned back, letting the music wash over him. He realized that this was not just talent. It was art born from real life, from struggles, dreams, and resilience. He could see the contrast between her current life as a waitress and the hidden brilliance she carried. For him, it was a moment of humility, a rare instance where he acknowledged that wealth and influence could not buy the authenticity and raw talent present in a human being. The melody shifted, becoming softer, more reflective. It spoke of memories and untold stories, of moments of quiet courage and hope. The waitress's fingers moved with grace, each note deliberate, yet flowing naturally. There was a story embedded in the music, one that only those willing to listen could understand. The diners felt it, sensing the depth and the heart behind every sound. As the piece drew to a close, there was a silence heavier than before, filled with unspoken admiration and awe. For a moment, the restaurant seemed frozen in time, as if everyone collectively held their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then, slowly, a ripple of applause began. It started softly, with one or two diners clapping, and soon grew louder, filling the room with appreciation. The waitress opened her eyes, startled by the response. Her cheeks flushed, and she gave a small, embarrassed smile. She had not expected such a reaction, not because she doubted her talent, but because she was unaccustomed to public attention. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment, as if unsure whether to continue or retreat. The applause encouraged her, not for vanity, but for the simple acknowledgement that her music had touched others. The millionaire rose slightly from his seat, his expression thoughtful. He had come seeking comfort and quiet, but instead he found inspiration. He could see her potential clearly now, the kind of talent that could not remain hidden forever. It was a rare, fleeting moment where he recognized that life could surprise even the most confident and self-assured person. He realized he had underestimated her, and that realization sparked a curiosity he had not felt in a long time. Other diners began to speak in hushed tones, sharing their amazement. Some wanted to know her name, some wanted to hear more, and others simply sat in silence, soaking in the lingering beauty of the music. The staff exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that something extraordinary had occurred. The piano, old and modest, had become a vessel for something magical. She was the one who had unlocked it. The waitress returned to her tables, resuming her duties with renewed energy. Her movements were still careful and precise. But there was a new lightness in her step, a subtle confidence that had not been there before. She interacted with guests warmly, answering questions and offering recommendations. Yet her mind remained partly with the piano. Partly with the music she had just played and the emotions it had stirred. The millionaire observed her quietly. He noticed the way she smiled at guests, the way she listened attentively, and the way she carried herself. It was a rare combination of humility and hidden strength, of ordinary appearance and extraordinary talent. He felt an unexpected respect for her, a sense that he had stumbled upon someone remarkable by chance. As the evening continued, the piano remained in the corner, silent now, but its presence was palpable. Everyone who had heard her play knew that something extraordinary had occurred, and the atmosphere of the restaurant had changed subtly. It was no longer just a place to eat. It was a place where a hidden talent had briefly shone. Leaving a lasting impression on everyone present, the waitress continued her work. But she felt a growing excitement within her. She knew that the music had not only touched the guests, but also stirred something in herself. It had reminded her of dreams she had long set aside, of passions she had thought were unreachable. The experience left her inspired, a quiet determination forming inside her, hinting that perhaps this was only the beginning. The millionaire finished his meal, leaving the restaurant with a new perspective. He had expected an ordinary evening, but he had encountered something extraordinary. He realized that talent and heart often appear where least expected, that sometimes the most powerful experiences come from the simplest and most overlooked sources. The memory of her performance lingered with him, a reminder that even in the most ordinary moments there is room for wonder, surprise, and awe. The music had left a mark on the restaurant, lingering in the air long after the last notes had faded. Diners returned to their conversations, but their voices were quieter now, softer, as if trying not to disturb the echo of what they had just witnessed. The waitress moved among the tables with ease, clearing plates, refilling drinks, and smiling politely. But inside, her mind was still with the piano, replaying the melodies she had just created and the feelings they had awakened. She thought about how long it had been since she had truly played like that, without worry, without restrictions. As a child, she had spent countless hours at the piano, learning songs, practicing scales, and discovering the beauty of music. Her parents had noticed her talent early on, encouraging her to pursue it. But life had a way of changing plans. Responsibilities had piled up, bills had needed paying, and the piano had been pushed aside. She had accepted the practical path, putting aside her dreams to make a living now. Sitting behind the piano once again, she felt that old connection stir. It was not just skill. It was a part of her identity that had never left. Every note she played carried a piece of her past, the joy of discovery, the frustration of mistakes, and the quiet moments when she had dreamed of performing for an audience. She realized that even though she had put music on hold, it had always been a part of her, waiting for the right moment to surface. The millionaire, still seated at his table, watched her with fascination. He had expected a routine evening, nothing out of the ordinary, and instead, he had encountered someone whose talent and passion could not be ignored. He studied her movements, noting the precision of her hands and the emotion she poured into each note. It was clear to him now that he had underestimated her. What he saw was not just a waitress playing piano. It was an artist expressing years of hidden potential. As she walked to serve another table, her fingers absent-mindedly brushed the piano keys. The millionaire noticed this small gesture, a subtle reminder of the skill she possessed. He wondered about her story. How had someone with such ability ended up working in a restaurant? He thought about the choices she must have made, the sacrifices required to survive and support herself. There was a quiet strength in her that he had not anticipated. He felt a growing respect for her. The evening progressed, and the restaurant began to empty slowly. The crowd had started as a busy hum of conversation and laughter. But now it was reduced to a few lingering diners, all quietly appreciating the ambiance. The piano sat waiting, an invitation she could no longer resist. She approached it once more, this time with a mix of anticipation and caution. The room was quieter, more intimate, and she allowed herself to fully immerse in the music. Her hands moved over the keys with ease, crafting a melody that was both familiar and new. It was more complex than before, weaving in subtle shifts and changes in tempo. Expressing emotions she had kept hidden for years, she played not for the audience, but for herself, letting the piano become an extension of her feelings. The music carried a story of her life, moments of hope, glimpses of joy, struggles overcome, and dreams still alive. The millionaire watched intently. He had never seen anyone play with such raw emotion and technical skill at the same time. Each note seemed deliberate, yet effortless, as if the piano itself was an extension of her soul. He realized that her talent was not something she had learned simply from practice. It was something innate, something that came from deep within her. He could see the layers of her life reflected in the music, the resilience and determination, the quiet moments of triumph and sorrow. As the melody reached a crescendo, the millionaire felt a stirring in his chest. He had been surrounded by success, wealth, and accomplishments his whole life, but this was different. Talent like hers could not be bought or commanded. It was something authentic, something pure, something that could touch people in a way money and power never could. For the first time in a long while, he felt genuinely moved by another human being, a recognition of skill, passion, and heart. The diners who remained had stopped speaking entirely, their eyes fixed on the piano. Some whispered quietly to each other, marveling at the unexpected brilliance they had found in a place so ordinary. A few staff members had paused to watch, understanding that this was no ordinary performance. It was not about entertainment or applause. It was about connection, emotion, and the ability to convey the depths of the human experience through music. The melody softened gradually, shifting to a reflective tone. It spoke of memories long past, of dreams once cherished and set aside, of challenges met with courage. The waitress's fingers glided effortlessly, each note deliberate, each pause meaningful. She had found a rhythm that allowed her to tell her story without words, communicating her experiences and emotions through the music itself. The millionaire remained silent, absorbing every note. He thought about the life she must have led, the obstacles she had faced, and the choices she had made. He realized that talent alone was not enough. It required perseverance, resilience, and a deep connection to one's own spirit. He saw in her a combination of these qualities, a rare blend that demanded respect and admiration. As the final notes faded, the room remained still for a moment longer, everyone holding their breath, as if afraid to break the spell. Then, quietly at first, applause began to ripple through the restaurant. It grew steadily, filling the space with appreciation and awe. The waitress looked up, surprised, her cheeks flushed. She had not expected such a response. Not because she doubted her ability, but because she had been unaccustomed to such recognition. She gave a small, humble smile, letting the applause wash over her without seeking more attention. Her hands rested on the keys for a moment, savoring the feeling of connection with the instrument and the people around her. She had shared a piece of herself, and the response reminded her that her passion still had power, that her music could touch others in ways she had long forgotten. The millionaire rose slightly from his seat, his expression thoughtful and reflective. He had expected an ordinary evening filled with polite conversation and fine dining, but instead, he had encountered something extraordinary. He realized that his assumptions about people and talent were often flawed. That brilliance could exist where he least expected it. The waitress had shown him that true talent and heart could not be hidden for long. He approached her after the performance, curious to know more about the person behind the music. She offered him a polite smile, not yet aware of the profound impact she had made. He asked her about her training, her background, and her experiences with music. She spoke modestly, sharing snippets of her childhood and the challenges she had faced. Never exaggerating, never seeking praise. Her humility only deepened his admiration. As they spoke, the atmosphere in the restaurant seemed charged with possibility. Other diners watched from a distance, intrigued by the unexpected encounter between a successful businessman and a talented waitress. The piano, silent once more, seemed to hum with anticipation. As if sensing that her journey was only beginning, the waitress realized that her life might be on the verge of change. She had always loved music, but circumstances had kept her from pursuing it fully. Now, after sharing her talent and seeing the impact it had on others, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The experience reminded her that dreams could be rekindled, that hidden potential could be revealed. And that extraordinary moments often came when least expected. The millionaire left the restaurant later that evening, carrying with him a memory that would stay with him for years. He had come seeking a quiet dinner, and instead, he had witnessed something that challenged his perceptions and touched his heart. He understood now that life was full of surprises, that talent and passion could appear in the most unlikely places, and that the people we overlook might hold the greatest potential. The waitress continued her work, but she moved with a new sense of confidence and anticipation. The music had reminded her of who she was, of the dreams she had once held, and of the power of her own abilities. She knew that this moment, though brief, had changed something inside her, opening the door to possibilities she had long set aside. And as she glanced at the piano, she felt a quiet determination. Knowing that this was only the beginning of her journey, the days after that evening at the restaurant were different for the waitress. She moved through her shifts with the same efficiency and care as always, but now there was a subtle spring in her step, a quiet energy that had not been there before. The piano had reminded her of her dreams and the joy she felt when playing, and that memory refused to fade. She found herself thinking about it even when she wasn't at work, imagining melodies and new compositions that she could try once. She returned. The millionaire did not forget the performance either. He found himself replaying the music in his mind, recalling the way her fingers had moved over the keys, the emotion she poured into every note. He was fascinated not just by her skill, but by the strength and humility that accompanied it. He realized that someone like her deserved an opportunity to share her talent with a wider audience. The thought grew into a plan, one he couldn't shake. One afternoon, he returned to the restaurant. It was quieter this time, the midday crowd just beginning to trickle in. He asked to speak with her, and she approached politely, expecting the usual businesslike tone that came with wealthy patrons. Instead, he smiled warmly. There was a genuine excitement in his voice. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, "but I wanted to speak with you about your music." Her heart skipped a beat. She had not expected him to remember or to take any interest beyond admiration. She nodded politely, unsure where the conversation might lead. "You have a remarkable talent," he continued. "I've seen many skilled musicians, but rarely someone who can touch people's hearts the way you do. I believe your music deserves a bigger stage. Would you consider performing at events, perhaps even professionally?" The offer surprised her. Her mind raced with questions and doubts. Performing professionally was a dream she had long set aside. Life had been about practicality, about earning enough to cover bills and responsibilities. She had never imagined that someone would recognize her talent in such a serious way, let alone offer her an opportunity to pursue it. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. The weight of her responsibilities pressed down on her. She needed a stable income, and the idea of stepping into the unknown was both thrilling and frightening. Yet there was a spark of excitement she could not ignore, a whisper from her own heart telling her that this was her chance. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've played music my whole life, but I've never done anything like this. I'm not sure I'm ready." The millionaire nodded thoughtfully. I understand. It's a big step, and it requires courage. But your talent is rare, and it has the power to inspire people. You don't have to decide immediately. Take your time to think about it. I believe in what you can do. His words lingered in her mind long after he left. That evening, after her shift ended, she sat by the piano in the empty restaurant. The keys were cold beneath her fingers, but as she began to play, warmth returned. She let herself lose track of time, exploring melodies and harmonies she had only imagined before. The music became a conversation with her own dreams. Each note a reflection of the possibilities now open to her. Over the next few days, she wrestled with her decision. She continued her work at the restaurant, smiling at customers and carrying out her duties. But her thoughts kept returning to the piano and the millionaire's offer. She considered the risks, the uncertainty, and the fear of stepping away from the security she had built for herself. Yet, she also thought about the joy of performing, the freedom of expressing herself fully, and the chance to finally share her music with the world. One evening, she confided in a colleague, a fellow waitress who had been a friend for many years. She spoke of her doubts, of the offer, and of the fear of failure. Her friend listened quietly, then said, "You have a gift. You've kept it inside for too long. Maybe it's time to let it shine. You can always find your way back if things don't go as planned, but you might never forgive yourself if you don't try." Her words resonated deeply. The waitress realized that fear had held her back for too long. Life had been about survival, yes, but now there was a chance to embrace something more. The music she had once loved could become a part of her life again, not just a hidden passion, but a true expression of who she was. After much contemplation, she made her decision. She would accept the opportunity. The next morning, she arrived at work with a renewed sense of purpose. The piano in the corner seemed to welcome her, waiting patiently for the music to return. She played a short melody before her shift, allowing the notes to clear her mind and focus her spirit. The music reminded her of why she had started, of the love she had for creating something beautiful, and of the courage it took to step into the unknown. When the millionaire returned to discuss the details, she was ready. She spoke confidently, expressing her excitement and gratitude for the chance to perform. They discussed the upcoming events, the expectations, and the opportunities for growth. She listened carefully, absorbing every word, understanding that this was not just an offer, but a beginning. The following weeks were filled with preparation. She balanced her work at the restaurant with practice, refining her pieces and exploring new compositions. She faced challenges, moments of doubt and fear of failure, but each time she returned to the piano, she felt her confidence grow. The music became a source of strength, a reminder that she had talent, passion, and the courage to pursue her dreams. As the first performance approached, excitement and nervousness intertwined. The waitress understood that this was more than just an event. It was the start of a new chapter in her life. She would step out of the comfort of her familiar routine and into a world that demanded both skill and courage. Yet, she felt ready, knowing that her music carried her own story that could inspire and move others. The day of the performance, the venue was filled with anticipation. Guests arrived, unaware of the surprise that awaited them. The waitress, dressed simply, yet elegantly, approached the piano. Her hands hovered over the keys for a moment, taking a deep breath, and then began to play. The first notes flowed effortlessly, confident and expressive. Filling the room with beauty and emotion, the audience was captivated. Each note spoke of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. She played with the same passion that had first drawn the millionaire's attention. And now, with a larger audience, the power of her music grew. The room was silent, save for the piano. As listeners were drawn into her world, experiencing her story without words, feeling the depth of her talent and heart. After the performance, the applause was thunderous. Guests rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, moved by the unexpected brilliance of her music. The waitress smiled, humbled and grateful, realizing that her decision had been the right one. She had stepped into the unknown, faced her fears, and embraced her talent. And in doing so, She had not only touched the hearts of others, but had also discovered a part of herself that had been waiting to shine. The millionaire approached her afterward, his eyes filled with pride and admiration. "You were incredible," he said. "I knew you had talent, but seeing you perform like this, it's extraordinary. This is only the beginning for you." The waitress nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment and possibility. She understood now that her life was changing, that doors were opening that she had never imagined. She had taken the first step toward fulfilling her dreams. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but also rewarding. The music had given her courage. The support of those who believed in her made the path forward brighter and clearer. As she left the venue that night, the piano's melody still echoing in her mind, she felt a sense of peace and determination. She had embraced her talent, faced her fears, and opened herself to new opportunities. Her journey was just beginning, and she knew that with every note she played, she would continue to inspire, to connect, and to grow. The music was no longer just a memory or a hidden passion, it was her life, her voice, and her future. The first public performance had left a mark not just on the audience, but on the waitress herself. She walked off the stage with a sense of exhilaration she had never known before. The applause still echoed in her ears, the cheers still warmed her heart, and the smiles on the faces of the people around her reminded her that her music had touched them in ways words never could. She realized that this was what she had been missing all along. The connection, the sharing of something personal and profound. Backstage, she sat quietly for a moment, letting the feeling settle. Her hands still tingled from the performance, her fingers having danced across the keys as if they had their own memory. She smiled to herself, thinking about how far she had come from the restaurant piano. From the small corner where she had once played in secret, now her music had reached a wider audience. And with it came a newfound confidence, a realization that her dreams were no longer distant hopes, but something tangible. The millionaire stood nearby, his eyes bright with admiration. He had been there from the beginning, but even he was surprised by the impact her performance had on the audience. "You've done something incredible," he said. "People are still talking about it. You've touched them with more than just music, you've shared a piece of yourself." She nodded, humbled by the words. It was true. Each note she had played carried a story, a reflection of her struggles and her perseverance. Music had been her companion through lonely nights, her solace in moments of doubt. And now it was her voice, powerful and undeniable. She realized that this was not just a performance. It was a declaration that she would no longer hide her talent or diminish her own worth. In the weeks that followed, opportunities continued to appear. Invitations to perform at small concerts, private gatherings, and even local events began to pour in. She balanced these new experiences with her work at the restaurant, determined not to leave her responsibilities behind too quickly. Yet each performance, no matter how small, strengthened her resolve and expanded her world. The piano became more than an instrument. It became a bridge between her past and her future. Every time she played, she noticed subtle changes in herself. She moved with more assurance. Her fingers flowed effortlessly, and her emotions became more expressive. The audience responded with enthusiasm. Some moved to tears, some quietly entranced. All captivated by the authenticity she brought to her music. She understood now that talent alone was not enough. It was passion, dedication, and the courage to share it that truly made an impact. The millionaire continued to support her, offering advice and encouragement without imposing pressure. He became a mentor of sorts, helping her navigate opportunities and introducing her to people who could help her grow as a performer. Yet, he respected her autonomy, allowing her to make decisions and discover her own path. His guidance was steady, a reminder that she did not have to face the challenges alone, and that belief in her abilities was sometimes the most valuable support of all. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a small concert hall, she received a standing ovation. People lined up to speak with her, expressing their admiration and gratitude for the music she had shared. She listened quietly, thanking each person sincerely, feeling a deep connection with every individual who had been touched by her performance. It was a humbling experience, and she realized that the journey she had begun in that quiet restaurant corner had grown into something far greater than she had imagined. Back in her apartment that night, she reflected on how her life had changed. The piano, once a hidden companion in moments of solitude, had become a symbol of possibility and transformation. She understood that the choice to embrace her talent had opened doors she never thought would exist. The fear she had felt was replaced by excitement, and the uncertainty of the future was now filled with opportunity and potential. Her days at the restaurant became a balance of service and preparation. She continued to work with care and dedication, but the piano loomed larger in her mind and her life. Each practice session, each small performance, became a step forward in building the confidence and skill needed to pursue her dreams fully. She discovered that the music she loved was not only her passion but also her identity, a way to express herself and communicate with the world. The millionaire watched her growth with pride and fascination. He had never intended to change her life, but her talent had demanded recognition, and he had been fortunate to witness the transformation firsthand. He saw the courage it took to step into the unknown, the humility with which she accepted both praise and critique, and the resilience that allowed her to continue despite fear and doubt. For him, it was a lesson in the power of hidden potential and the importance of seeing beyond appearances. Months passed, and the waitress's reputation grew. She performed at larger venues, her audience expanding with each event. Critics began to notice her, praising the emotion and authenticity of her music. Yet she remained grounded, remembering the restaurant where it all began, where she had first shared her gift with an unsuspecting crowd. The memory of that night reminded her that extraordinary talent could emerge in the most ordinary places, and that opportunity often arrived when least expected. She also realized the effect her journey had on others. People began to approach her with their own stories of hidden talents, of dreams they had abandoned or postponed. She listened with empathy, encouraging them to pursue their passions and reminding them that the first step was often the hardest, but also the most rewarding. Her experiences became a source of inspiration, not just through her music, but through her example of courage and determination. The millionaire remained a steadfast presence in her life, attending performances when possible and continuing to offer guidance. Their relationship had evolved from a chance encounter into a meaningful mentorship built on mutual respect and admiration. He often marveled at how someone so seemingly ordinary could possess such extraordinary depth, and he understood that talent, when nurtured and supported, could flourish beyond imagination. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, she sat at the piano alone, reflecting on her journey. She thought about the countless hours of practice, the moments of doubt, and the courage it took to step forward. She realized that music had not only transformed her life, but had also given her a voice to connect with others in ways she had never imagined. It was a reminder that pursuing one's passion, no matter the obstacles, could lead to profound fulfillment. She played a melody that combined elements of her past and present, weaving together the experiences that had shaped her. Each note told a story of resilience, hope, and the beauty of discovering one's own potential. The music filled the room, not just as sound, but as an expression of a life reclaimed, a dream embraced, and a future built on courage and authenticity. As the final notes echoed into silence, she felt a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. Her journey had begun in a quiet restaurant, with a simple act of sharing her music, and had grown into a path of opportunity, recognition, and personal fulfillment. She had stepped into the unknown, faced her fears, and discovered the true power of her talent. The applause that followed, imagined or real, was a celebration not just of her skill, but of her courage and heart. She knew that the path ahead would continue to challenge her, but she felt ready. With each performance, each note played, she would continue to inspire, connect, and grow, embracing the extraordinary life that had been waiting for her all along. Her story was no longer confined to the corner of a restaurant. It had become a testament to the power of passion, perseverance, and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. She understood that talent could be hidden in anyone, in any place, waiting for the right moment to shine. And now, having taken that first step, she was living proof that dreams could be realized, and that the music of the heart could resonate far beyond the walls where it began.